The story follows an unnamed main character through a suppressed memory from his childhood. Every day his mother would cook dinner and, after everybody else had their serving, would load up a large plate with excessive amounts of food to take to his older brother Matty, who would always eat upstairs in his own room. The night after the main character's birthday, his mother had assembled an especially large meal for Matty, to the point she could barely carry it. In a bad mood as his brother had not wished him happy birthday and presumably jealous, the main character, who we will refer to as Jay from now on, asks his father why Matty needs so much food and why he doesn't come down and eat with the family. While his father attributes his appetite to puberty, he avoids the second question, only to respond when asked a second time, insisting that he was simply self-conscious. As young children do, Jay decides to insult Matty, saying he sounds like a big baby. His father, upset about the comment, makes Jay say he's sorry, of which he does hesitantly before his mother returns and they eat the rest of their dinner in silence. That night in bed, he plotted a trick to play on Matty. The next day, after returning from school as his mother was out grocery shopping, Jay went up to Matty's room, knocked on the door, and attempted to speak to him, informing him that he had friends coming over today and inviting him to join them. To his dismay, there was no response. After descending halfway down the stairs, he heard a sound behind Matty's door and once more called out to his brother, only to hear nothing but something being dragged a short distance across the floor before stopping. After a few seconds of silence, he descended the rest of the stairs. Later that day, Jay's friends Cody and Hunter arrived, and as they played outside, he explained to them his plan, though it took some convincing to get Hunter in on it. During dinner, they rushed through their food and went upstairs, being warned not to bother Matty as he was eating. Loudly, they entered Jay's room and shut the door to ensure his parents heard them, then quietly they snuck out and over to Matty's room. Jay knocked on the door and called out to his brother, insisting his friends went home and asking if he could come in as Hunter attempted to get them to abandon their mission. There was no response. They waited for 10 seconds, and with still no response, Cody appeared to be disappointed. Jay reached out and grabbed the doorknob, a hot feeling in his chest, unsure if it were anger or maybe jealousy. Internally monologuing, Jay describes the various ways Matty made his life worse, from being overshadowed by him to losing their dog because it wouldn't stop barking at his door. He explains how Matty doesn't play sports, have friends, go to school, or even leave his room. He finishes with a simple line. No, it was hate. I hated Matty. He opens the door and a vile smell hit their noses, bad enough to make Hunter gag. The room was filled with various broken belongings, the remains of food, and a TV playing a children's cooking show, introducing the episode's special guest. The floor was horribly molded, not even leaving a clean space to step. Once again, Hunter attempted to convince them to leave, to no avail. "What's your name, sweetie?" said the TV. Cody jumped on the bed, disgustedly proclaiming that it was wet. It was the first time in years Jay had been in his brother's room. Once again internally monologuing, he explains that once they were inseparable, but he hadn't seen him in a long time. "I'm Emily," the TV interrupted. "Why, Emily, you look good enough to eat." Jay then continues with his monologue, explaining that Matty had been in an accident during a field trip and that he hadn't seen him since. While his parents showed him videos and pictures they insisted were recent, you couldn't tell if Matty had aged at all in them. After the accident, his parents took the stem cell lab they held responsible to court, winning a sum of money they used partially to buy Jay gifts, distracting him from trying to see his brother. As something shifted in the side of the room, Jay beckons for Cody to leave. After getting off the bed, a pale hand reached out from under it, grabbing Cody by the ankle, causing him to scream for help. Jay's parents begin to rush up the stairs, and Hunter runs away as Jay watched in morbid fixation. Could this thing, this impossibly tall creature clambering from under the bed, truly be his brother? His dad grabbed him and rushed him into the hall. Before shutting the door, he saw the beast holding Cody upside down. The thing had an incredibly swollen belly that dragged across the floor as though it had swallowed a boulder. His mom stood, raising her arms in front of it. Soon after, Jay blacked out. Now in his 30s, because of his wife pushing him to pursue help for his night terrors, a specialist brought the memories of these events to light in Jay's mind. Finding and contacting Hunter, Hunter explained that Cody never made it out of that house, and that Jay's parents did a good job of covering it up, the case being considered a kidnapping. Hunter requests Jay never contact them again, and they part. Finally, Jay tried to contact his mom. She hadn't been answering her phone that day, but he needed to talk to her in person, and maybe burn the house down on his way out. If we're to go by the story, it seems like Maddie hadn't exactly been his original normal self for a long time. Not only do we have the monologue talking about the past and how they had to get rid of the dog because it wouldn't stop barking at his door, presumably implying that at that time he had already at least somewhat transformed. But also, at the very beginning of the story, we're informed that he didn't see it as anything strange that he never got to see his brother when they were eating. He considered it like how his father went to work every day or his mother cooked dinner every day, which meant it was standard. It had been happening for theoretically as long as he can remember. If I had to guess, the incident referred to in this, they say a long time, was probably upward of a year, maybe 2 years ago. And over that time, Maddie changed a lot. Theoretically, whatever stem cell accident happened caused some sort of massive mutation in his body that caused him to become like this. Now, as they get into his room before they see him for the first time, it's said that the bed is wet, which can be interpreted many ways, but my primary way of thinking here is that he had wet the bed. I feel like Maddie might be mutated to a point he doesn't quite have full control over his body or full mental capacity, maybe. He may have no longer had control of his bladder, or he may no longer have had the mental capacity to know to leave and go use the bathroom because of the mutations caused by the accident. I believe personally it's probably a somewhat both, leaning more toward him not being fully functional physically. As said later on, his stomach drags across the floor as though he had swallowed a boulder. That to me implies that his food was not actually being digested. It was just being held, stretching his stomach out and holding it against the floor. But I also don't believe he was entirely mentally intact, both because of him grabbing Cody and just the implication of food being smeared across objects on the TV, staining everything, all the toys being broken. Whatever had been done to Maddie had massive effects both physically and mentally, and left him in a state to where he was no longer at all Maddie. But instead of accepting this, trying to do something, they kept him in his room and just kept feeding him, so he kept growing. And the parents, through all of this, tried to still maintain some semblance of a normal life. They tried to keep their other son happy by giving him gifts and toys, keep him from discovering what had happened to his brother. They had even faked photos and videos, or shown him old photos and videos to convince him that his brother was still the same and doing well alongside him. Through all the lies and deceit, they were still trying to hold their family together the whole way through, something they just couldn't do. Eventually, the boy went to see his brother, not even from curiosity, but from anger, and exactly what presumably they feared happened, exactly the reason they told him not to, happened. Except instead of it being them losing their son, like I would assume they would expect, it was somebody else. An interesting part that can be easily overlooked is the TV. It's very clearly implying cannibalism in some way, but it doesn't really make sense. The TV wouldn't know what's going on, for one, obviously, but also, there's no evidence of cannibalism or anything of the type. Even when Maddie grabs Cody, he just holds him there. There's no evidence he ate Cody, though maybe. But what if, instead of the TV knowing and playing this is actually a sign that the memory isn't accurate? Over time, memories can corrupt and decay. Perhaps that's exactly what was going on. The memory was decayed after these 22 or so years, and now what remains is a monster story as opposed to an actual memory of his brother, a severely ill kid who had been horrifically harmed by an accident in a stem cell lab and was no longer physically or mentally fully functional. Maybe Cody was killed in an accident there. Maybe Maddie didn't know his strength with his newfound size, and something happened to Cody that day. Maybe that part's all accurate, but maybe there was no monster, just a very sick boy. At least, that's how it seems to be. There's not really any hard fact here, just theory. That's fun to theorize. Either way, this was a good story. It was well written, and honestly, there was very little extra fluff. Quite a bit of the story was just important detail that actually came into play in some way or another, and I greatly appreciate that. Alright, hope you enjoyed. See ya.